Well, hello, everybody. Today we have a special interview with Chuck Hammond from Hazardous Movement. They just came out with their fourth scenario pack, including a couple of new geomorphic map boards. So we're going to get into all that right away. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Hey there, everybody. I'm Derek Ritter from Ritter Krieg, and this is
Chuck Hammond from Hazmo, also known as Hazardous Movement.
So we're going to do a little interview with Chuck Hammond. We've been planning this for a while, and thanks everybody for tuning in. And here we go. Chuck, before we start, anything you want to say?
Yeah, I'd like to say that this interview has been sponsored by Sierra Nevada, which I like to call the Ritter Krieg of beers. Just thought I'd just like to add that.
So it takes 3 weeks to get to your fridge.
No, you're way too self-critical.
Okay, so
it just gets sent to my son.
oh,
That's all, because we have the same name.
That's right. That's right.
But it eventually reaches my house.
Okay, so all right. So we start. Well, let's just talk about you for a minute before we get into Hazmo and all the fun ASL stuff. So, where are you from? What do you do? And tell me about your family.
All right, I'm from San Diego, California. I'm actually from outside of there. For people who are familiar with San Diego, I'm from Lemon Grove, which is in East County. So born and raised in San Diego, and went off to boarding school for 3 years. Did my senior year of high school on a congressional scholarship in Germany. Went to Georgetown, got my undergrad there. Did my master's and PhD at University of California, Irvine. I'm now a professor of German at the University of Tennessee in Martin. I've been married for 27 years. My wife is the Japanese professor. We have 3 kids, ages 23, 20, and 18. That's pretty much me in a nutshell.
Sounds good. And when did you start playing ASL?
It was given to, regular squad leader was given to me as a gift in 1980. I can't remember if it was my birthday or whether it was Christmas. It was my birthday. And it promptly went on the shelf for 2 years because it looked like the rules, made it impossible to play, although it was total eye candy. But I just felt like I didn't have the brains to do it. And then I was, I had my best friend over. His name's Raul Martinez, which is like John Smith in San Diego. And, we were 12 years old and we were looking for something to do. And he's like, "Oh, what about that squad leader thing? Let's play that." And I'm like, "Oh, the rules are way too long. We can't do it." And he's like, "Yeah, sure we can." So I pulled it down, and lo and behold, you only had to learn, 4 or 5 pages of rules at a time. And I was so impatient.
Every scenario was structured that way. So
exactly, it was brilliant. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And we started playing, and there were games that preceded it. It all started out, as it does with a lot of us, with Risk, and then it went on to more complex games, and we were up to playing these SPI. I'm not sure if you remember SPI, Simulations Productions Incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
And we were up to playing these SPI games of the Civil War and stuff like that, and having a good time and stuff. But from the very first playing of Guards Counterattack, I knew that
was it.
This was that this was it. Like,
put a ring on that finger. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think it's brilliant for so many reasons, but one of the reasons is that it satisfied the desire not to play like, here I am with the 82nd Airborne, but instead, you've got a few squads and you need to take that house over there.
Yeah.
Like that to me is eminently more interesting than these division core level kind of games. But they really don't do it for me. They never did.
Yeah, I always thought that the thing about ASL that drew me to it is you could really see the whites of their eyes.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and it's in the name, right?
yeah.
I mean, it's a squad leader, and it really comes down to leadership in a lot of ways. And the leaders themselves had names, so it really personalized it for me, along with the fact that all the nationalities had their advantages and disadvantages. It's something I loved back then, and I love now. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Take the Germans and Russians. The Germans have primo equipment,
Yeah.
but there are not a lot of Germans.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The Russians, for the most part, their equipment's not as good, but there are a lot of them. And just like in the scenario we're playing right now.
You know what I never, and I still can't figure out is the German squad, other than its range, just as first line squad,
Yeah.
is identical to the Russian first line squad. But somehow the Germans can take out the Russians at a 3-to-1 ratio with the same squads. And I don't know if it's like a mentality thing of the players. Like you're like, I'm playing the Russians, so I'm going to be more risky, or I don't know what it was, but they're almost identical. And yet the German squad always seems to have that advantage over the Russian. And I know there's exceptions with the special rules at night.
No, you're absolutely right, and it may be a mental kind of handicap that we place on ourselves, but I think that you're underselling the power of the 467 because he also has spraying fire.
That's a good point. Yeah.
And he's not being led by commissars.
Yeah.
And he has an ELR.
Yeah, and he's usually backed by superior and more leaders. Yeah.
Precisely,
Yeah.
and all those things combined make him superior because it's not just you. It's not just 447s and 467s you have on the board.
Yeah, sure.
You've got a lot more stuff going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
But your confidence goes up. I know exactly what you mean. Your confidence goes up when you've got 467s versus 447s.
Yeah, and I just expect the 467 to pass that morale check. Then I know the 447 will not.
This game will make anybody superstitious.
Right. Okay, so
serious. I had before this interview, I had to take all my rabbit's feet and voodoo dolls and everything away from behind me.
Yeah.
Because then people would discover how superstitious this, and the bone out of my nose. People would discover how superstitious this game has made me.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people change dice.
Oh my God!
Yeah, they changed dice.
Yes, I don't do that.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
I do not do that. I don't change dice.
No, a lot of people do.
People will do that. That's true. That is funny.
No, had enough of these for today. So, yeah. So tell me, what's your favorite theater of war type of scenario?
I'm gonna say PTO.
Okay.
I
noticed a lot of Chinese scenarios in your pack.
Yeah, I do love Chinese Japanese because it's a similar kind of dynamic like when we were talking about with the Germans and Russians.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's easier with the Japanese to conduct a mass assault and a human wave banzai, whatever you want to call it, and that they're always threatening to do that. Even a single man counter can do that, has always fascinated me. And when you watch somebody who's really good at the PTO, I'm better than your average bear, but I'm not what you call really good.
Right.
And you see how they exploit all the subtleties of the Japanese.
Yeah. It's
a beautiful thing to behold.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
It really, really is.
Yeah.
Where, especially when the Japanese are on the attack or defense, it really doesn't matter. And they're facing guys, they're facing 667s and 768s and stuff like that, and they're letting them go by. They're ambushing them. They're half squatting them. They're encircling them. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And, by all rights, you think that the Marines or whoever should just roll.
Yeah.
And we have a great scenario designed by Chad Cummins that portrays exactly that. It's called The Will to Win, and it's in our pack that just came out. Okay. And when you look at the OB, you think, oh my God, the Marines are just going to roll. There are comparatively few Japanese, and the Japanese have much less firepower, et
Yeah.
cetera, et cetera. But then you play it, and the Marines are battling for their lives.
Yeah.
And just because of the terrain and because of the capabilities of the Japanese, the fact that they can rally so quickly, and I guess it's also amazing to me how many people don't know that, like, they nominally play the PTO and they're not aware of all the tricks.
Oh, yeah.
There
It's
are a lot of people who don't know. I've seen this in tournaments where they had no idea that the Japanese could break and run.
yeah.
And if you play the
Yeah.
Japanese like that, yeah, you're not going
Yeah,
to win a
you
lot.
have to
You,
you have
you
to
have
disband into two half squads, but you could get out of there. Yeah.
So there's all these little subtle
Yeah.
things,
That evens out
the
the field.
fact that
Yeah.
it evens up the odds. What's also fascinating for me too is the way the Japanese deal with tanks.
Mm-hmm.
With the tank hunter heroes, especially if you can HIP them,
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and how
And
much firepower you can suck up,
yeah.
with this 9 morale guy,
Oh yeah.
and a lot of times he's facing just a -1 or even a 0 mod, so he's
Yeah.
gonna, the Americans have to fire everything at him
Yeah.
lest he go in there and destroy this tank, and even gets the equivalent of an ATMM,
Well, yeah, oh, absolutely.
opportunity.
And DC hero, there's nobody who's not going to shoot at it, and if he can soak up 3-4 shots before he dies,
Oh,
even if he
oh,
dies, then
yeah,
then you're sending in your bonsai wave, and everybody's
yeah.
already fired. You know. So
Exactly.
yeah.
And so I guess it's my favorite because I haven't mastered it yet.
Yep.
And I've seen people who I would say have mastered it, and I'm not there yet. I feel like I'm a brown belt, you know,
Gotcha. Brown
and I
belt's
don't know
pretty
if I'll
stiff.
ever be
Yeah,
black
it's pretty
belt.
good. Yeah.
But
So,
yeah,
so how often do you get to break away from your Hazmo and your school and your everything to just play a scenario?
Chad and I'll do that. And of course, that's all we did pretty much before Hazmo. Hazmo came about. What we really, really missed were, the scenarios like in Beyond Valor,
Yeah.
where every scenario had something about it that made it memorable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, Mila 18.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to forget that.
Yeah.
You know, you get all the Jewish partisans, and they're all HIP, and you get mouse holes, and you get to use sewer movement and all that other stuff. Um, inside of the Volga, you know, for every half squad, that the Germans exit off the east edge, they actually block a 628 from reinforcing the factory. Like, little special rules like that really go a long way to giving each scenario its own unique flavor.
Yeah.
And I made this scenario Born Again. And I said, Chad, I designed this. You want to give this a try? So let's give it a try, you
Yeah.
know. And we played it, 7 or 8 times in a row. Like, we were having a blast,
Yeah.
you know. And after that, I was like, it's time for us to do this.
Which scenario was that?
It was Born Again.
Okay, Born Again. Where
And
did you
we
release
only
that?
made
In the first one?
that's Hazmo 1.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, Hazmo
Okay.
1. And but anyway, it was the very first one was called Born Again.
Okay. Oh.
And it was called Born Again because these guys, it was the Canadians at Ortona
Yeah.
and Little Stalingrad,
Mm-hmm.
and they weren't completely green. They'd had their baptism of fire in Sicily, but this was even worse, and so it's like a second baptism of fire. So I called it Born Again.
Gotcha.
And yeah, it was. We released it on May 15th, 2021, and Chad said, he'd be happy if we sold 50 of them,
Yeah.
and we ended up selling, gosh, I don't know what it is now, probably 400 or 500 of them. I don't know.
Well, that's
It's a
wonderful.
lot.
So that's when it
You know.
started. Hazmo started May 2021.
That is correct.
That's the okay. So and you have You have 4 products out now with the new one, and we'll talk about the new one in a little bit. But
Sure.
and there's something different in the new one that none of the other 3 had, and we'll talk about that.
That is correct.
But
You're well
so
informed.
so Hazmo is you and Chad.
Yes.
Who does what?
Chad play tests and designs,
Okay.
and I do pretty much everything else. Um, the uh, the graphic design is done by one of my sons, my younger son,
Oh, wonderful.
Dion, and so he's the one who he knows the InDesign program really well,
Okay.
and so he's the one who makes the scenario cards themselves.
Okay.
But as far as shipping and packaging and printing and
Yeah.
advertising and all that, accounting,
Yeah.
storage, all that other stuff, I do that. Largely a function of the fact that Chad is mostly abroad.
We don't use
He's-
that.
he's-
We don't use that term anymore.
Okay, he's a chick, all right. No, I'm just kidding. No, but he's abroad most of the year. He's spent very little time in the United States in the last 20, 25 years. And so we play a lot of Vassal, and that's reflected in our scenarios too. So yeah, we were really heartened and encouraged by the success of Pack One,
Yeah.
and so we kept it going. Joe Leos reached out and asked if we would
That's from the Albany crew.
Albany crew. That's
Yep.
exactly right, and asked if we could maybe get Pack Two out by Albany. And I said, "Wow, that's asking a lot. I'm not sure we can do that. Come on, I don't know. Maybe we might have to wait a year." He was like, "Come on, Chuck. Come on, you guys can do this." And we did, and we actually produced the second pack by that December.
Okay. So let's talk about the. You have 4 products with Hazmo now. Let's talk about the first 3.
Yep.
Maybe if you could describe, because they are all different.
Yes, they are.
And you could describe what they are, what's different, and then I'd like to know what your learning curve was. What you would have changed knowing then what you know now. Not as so much as the scenarios themselves. I know they all stand on their own, but I'm very interested in the production and in the distribution and how you went about this. And I'm sure some people have always wanted to do their own little thing like this too, and maybe they could learn a little bit from you so they could become your competitor and run you out of business.
That's right. That's a very good question. As far as the scenarios themselves, very, very little. There were logistical things with the first pack where, as we pointed out, for example, a lot of those scenarios are quite large, which we have no problem with. We like large scenarios. It was kind of a vanity pack in that way. It was kind of like, if you give a couple jazz musicians a bass and a drum and a piano, and just tell them to just go off. That's kind of like what we did. We weren't worried about, will people be able to play this at a tournament or something like that. We were just designing the kind of scenarios that we ourselves love to play. And that's really, that's the one thing they all have in common. But I was just learning how to make these scenario cards, and I was very, very paranoid about being sued. So, I knew from experience, I play tested for other third-party producers. I knew from experience that, you cannot copyright numbers in a box. And so that's basically the way we did it with the first pack. We didn't have any counter art.
Right.
And then, after hearing complaints that there's no counter art, I got in touch with Rodney Kinney, who created Vassal, and got permission from him to use Vassal counter art.
Right.
And that revolutionized our look.
I remember we had a discussion about, I think there were 3 or 4 things where I put input in, and one of the big ones
Yes.
was counter art. So a
Yeah.
lot of us are just visual, and if we
Mm-hmm.
can't visualize what we're playing with,
Yeah.
me personally anyway, turns me off from the scenario. I'll go to one where I can visualize it.
Yes.
Like I
And
recognize the silhouette of a German assault engineer or a Panther tank or a Joseph Stalin tank. You just
Exactly.
recognize it and go, this is what I want.
So anyway, that was pack 1, and then pack 2 was kind of a vanity pack of my own, because there are civil war happened before, during, and after World War II, where they used the exact same weapons.
Okay, so just before we go there, scenario pack
Mm-hmm.
1 was
Yes.
just a mix of all different theaters, but mostly
Correct.
very large scenarios. I remember this.
Correct.
Yes, correct. Okay, both
And not
in
monster,
counter,
not monster,
not
but,
monster,
but, you know,
but well, some of them were pretty monster. I mean, not last bid monster, but
No.
there were some of them I remember, like 40,
Yeah.
50 squad.
It was more like in the 20-30 range per
Oh,
side.
maybe I'm thinking combined 40, 50.
Yeah, I think you might be thinking
Okay.
combined or stuff
Alright.
like that. But
Yeah.
we did have a couple in there that were, believe it or not, tournament sized.
Okay.
And the most popular one that we have out there, by far, if the roar is any indication, is
Seaside Retreat.
That's
the
the
one.
biggest one.
That is the biggest one?
And it's also the funnest one, if you ask me.
Is it really?
Yeah, that Seaside Retreat, we played that one again like 8 times or something. We played that one, dude, way beyond.
Yeah.
After we fixed all the problems and stuff.
Yeah.
We kept playing it because there are so many different ways to do it.
Yeah.
We had so much fun with Seaside Retreat, but that's the biggest one.
Okay.
Not the longest one, but the biggest one. So that one's got what, 20?
Yeah, maybe I'll give that a shot.
Yeah, that's 20 squads on one side and something similar on the other. That's the biggest one. 23 squads on one side. No, what am I saying? 33 squads the Free French have. That's the biggest one we have. 33 squads versus what? 14 and 8 is what? 22 versus 22 squads.
Okay, yeah, you're right. They don't look as big as I thought, but they're still big.
No.
But
They're still big. Yeah.
and a lot of turns.
And then Kids these days was a huge success.
With the SS.
People really like this one, and because both sides get to attack and defend.
Mm-hmm.
And the SS sets up all HIP.
Mm-hmm.
They only have 6 squads in the beginning, but they all set up HIP.
Okay.
And people, of course, also like the name.
Yep.
Because it's the Hitler Youth Division.
Yep. Okay, so pack 2.
So anyway,
Tell me about pack 2.
All right, so pack 2 is kind of a vanity pack for me because I love Spanish Civil War scenarios. And I've always said, wow, you've got all these civil wars that were happening before, during, and after World War II, but you don't see a lot of scenarios made for them, even though they use the same weapons. And so we made this pack, and it's got 5 Spanish Civil War, 2 Greek Civil War, and 3 Chinese Civil War scenarios. And of course, so Spain was 36 to 38, and then Greece was 44 to 49, and of course the Chinese Civil War spanned 20 years, but it was interrupted by World War II.
Sure.
And so we had a lot of fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, what's also special about it is we had to make a whole bunch of rules for, okay, what do you do with, Greek communists? What do you do with Spanish Republicans? What do you do with the Moroccans who were fighting on behalf of the Spanish nationalists? All this kind of stuff. And so we have a completely separate page that covers all that stuff. So all you have to do is say, oh, okay, I've got the Spanish nationalists against the Spanish Republicans. Okay, so, the Republicans can use commissars and blah, blah, blah. Okay, got it. And you can just start playing. And so we've got that master sheet that you just consult just to see, what nationality you have and how that governs the troops.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so
was it
yeah,
was it well received? Yeah.
It was well received, but I would say it's our probably our least selling product, probably because I know a lot of people, to be honest with you, who won't play Spanish Civil War. They say, well, it's not World War II.
Gotcha. Yeah, same thing with Korea.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. And they're kind of missing out. You even have people, we were talking about PTO before and how awesome PTO is.
Yep.
And you still have people who will play only ETO.
Yep.
And is that because the rules for the Japanese are bad?
Yep.
No, it's just that, these players just for whatever reason don't want to spread their wings, and that's
Yep.
their right.
Yep.
But to me, they're missing out.
Yeah. To me, I'll play, and I mean, I have my preferences. I like
Of
the meat
course,
and
everybody does.
potatoes,
Yeah.
but I'll play anything except the Slovakians, thanks to Jim Stoller. I don't know if he remembers that, but I will never play the Slovakians again. And other than that, I don't care who I play. So, yeah.
Good, good,
Yep.
good. Oh, that's funny.
All right.
And
So
so
go
that
ahead.
was pack two.
Yeah, that was pack 2. So let's talk about pack 3. Pack 3, I'm going to tell you right now, and I have not played pack 4 other than the one
Mm-hmm.
we are playing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But pack 3 was my favorite. Like if I was to go away on vacation for 2 months and I could only take one of your products with me, it would
Yeah.
be that one. I love the era. But you tell us about it. Go ahead.
Well, it's funny because I'm being honest when I say you're not the only person to tell us that.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of a Chad vanity project. If I were to say, what is Chad's specialty within the game? Like mine is the Japanese.
Mm-hmm.
His, hands down, is urban combat.
Mm-hmm.
He's extremely good at it. And if you really want to say, okay, what part of urban combat? Stalingrad.
Mm-hmm.
He is very, very good at that. Chad said, we've got to make. This was his vanity project. He said,
Mm-hmm.
if I had my druthers, I would make good scenarios for these uh, beautiful maps.
Yeah, some of the scenarios take place on the Valor of the Guard maps, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Some of them are on the Valor of the Guard maps,
Some
and
on
some
Red
of them are on
October.
the Red October.
Okay.
Right. And so that's on purpose.
Okay.
So, we very much like the scenarios that were made for Red Barricades,
Mm-hmm.
but you never ever hear, I never do, and I spend a lot of time in the hobby. I've never heard anybody gush about the scenarios that were included in Valor of the Guards and Red October.
Right.
I know some people who like the campaigns, but
Mhm.
I've never heard anybody say, "Oh, those were great scenarios, weren't they?"
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
for whatever reason, maybe they were rushed or something. I have no idea, but
Yeah.
I think Chad's idea was, okay, these are beautiful maps. Let's make good, like memorable scenarios that people actually want to play.
Yeah.
For these. And I say vanity because, and not in a bad way, but all of us have our ASL ideal. All of us have rules that we wish were tweaked or different or not there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And since we were creating our own product, we had that kind of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And so Chad said, in the space of a scenario, sewer movement is a lot of times more of an annoyance than it's worth.
Mm-hmm.
So they just said, boom, no sewer movement.
Yeah.
No. Or, there are these very, very esoteric rules associated with Red October,
Mm-hmm.
like the smokestack sniper,
Oh yeah.
stuff.
Yep.
And so we just deep sixed, these things because our emphasis was on playability
Right.
and fun.
Mm-hmm.
So we tried to take away those things that, have you searching through the rules for half an hour,
Right.
while still maintaining like the excitement of Stalingrad.
That's one of my favorite aspects of Haddon and Flames. You can play the entire campaign
Mhm.
and pretty much never open the rule book.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, we're big believers in that, and we're also, if I can talk about Hazmo in general, what makes us different is we're not opposed to special rules, but we are opposed to superfluous special rules.
Right.
If you have a special rule in there, it better make it more fun,
Mm-hmm. Not just more realistic.
not just more realistic. Yeah,
Right.
we are definitely not
Yep.
of that stripe at all. It's a
Yep.
game.
Yeah.
It's not a history book.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
definitely going to hit its mark with a number of players, you know. And
It.
there's certain players that want that historicity, you know, where they just say,
Mhm.
This is how it was, you know, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. This building
Yes.
caught fire, so it's got to be in there somewhere where it's randomly.
Exactly.
But you know, now you're looking through rules for you know how
For blaze spread.
for
Yeah, exactly. And
yeah.
was it really worth it? Did it enhance
Because
the
it was in some
playability?
corner of the map board that we're not even using, you know, at
Yes.
that stage in the scenario. Yeah.
Yeah, that is definitely not us.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not gonna have a Hazmo scenario with, Tiger tanks running around in 1939,
Right.
obviously. But
You don't watch the
if
History Channel, do you?
That's right. No, that's right, the History Channel.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at some point, uh, his historical accuracy has to yield
Mm-hmm.
to playability and fun.
Yeah.
It's a game.
Yeah, and
Uh,
leaving some historical things out doesn't mean you have to be ahistorical. Doesn't mean
that's
you
exactly
right,
right.
right,
Exactly right. It's
yeah,
just that you don't have to That's
S-
really well put.
right. Some
The
things
much
are
better.
just irrelevant. Yeah,
Things are just irrelevant, and especially irrelevant to gameplay.
yeah,
And I think some people fall more in love with the system than they do the game.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Like they're in love with the system and the fact that you can recreate practically anything, with a special rule if it doesn't already exist in the game, et cetera, et cetera. But at what point do you say, okay, I've got 12 special rules here?
mm-hmm.
How playable is this?
Yeah,
And so we really try to avoid that because we really like it too, where you don't have to consult the rule book that much.
yeah,
If anything, I think we're moving in the direction of simplifying
mm-hmm.
uh, victory conditions.
Yeah,
A lot of what Chad does extremely well. Like I make most of the scenarios. He makes some, and he makes some very good ones. But I've designed most of the scenarios, and we've compared what he does to my scenarios to a Japanese bonsai tree,
mm-hmm.
where he basically says, okay, deep six this,
Yeah.
shit can
Just
that,
trim
you know,
it.
trim,
Yeah,
trim. That's
yeah,
usually what it is. It's usually
yeah,
not add stuff. It's
mm-hmm.
usually trim stuff away.
Yeah,
And the holy grail when you're a playtester is to break the scenario. You
right,
want to
correct,
break the
correct.
scenario. And if you can't break the scenario, it suggests that it's probably ready for prime time,
Yep.
assuming that it's fun, obviously.
Incidentally,
But,
same thing as being a sicentist. You know.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. It's very
Mm-hmm.
similar. If you can't reproduce the results as a scientist, and then obviously you've got to go back to the drawing board.
Or
if I
if you can
understand
break
that
it
correctly.
one time. Yeah.
Yeah, if you break
Yep.
it one time, then you can't,
Yep.
you can't draw the same conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like that. So he really goes out of his way to break it.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the time it makes me laugh. Sometimes it really makes me grit my teeth,
Mm-hmm.
when I think I've got a great scenario, and he's on the defense, and all he does is, deploy all his guys and just fill up every location of a second level building,
Yeah.
so that I don't have time to take the building. Like
Yeah.
that, that kind of stuff, where that kind of cheese. But
Yeah.
at the same
But
time,
you
I
need to do it.
and you think you've got this great product, and he just points that out, boom, boom, boom. It can be very humbling, but you've got to get over yourself.
Yeah.
And you can't have your ego attached to it too much. The idea is we want to make something that's really good, and we want to have a reputation for quality.
Mm-hmm.
And that reputation for quality, we want to permeate every aspect of the product. So, when you order from us, our orders go out on time. The quality, as you've seen, the quality of the card stock itself is legit.
Yeah.
The quality of the printing and the graphic design is really good. We really try and make it top notch. And we basically make it because we're ASL consumers too.
Yeah.
And we know what it feels like to get something in the mail and be like, yeah, this is worth every penny.
Yeah.
And we also know what it feels like to get something in the mail and be like, I've been had.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we really want to produce the kind of product that we ourselves would love to see in the mailbox and would love to, put on the table and play.
Yeah.
And if we have any secret sauce other than like this emphasis on quality, it's what I told you before, is we want each scenario to stand alone, and when you play it, you remember it, and you're like, oh yeah, this is the one,
That yeah.
where the crocodile comes in, and the first time it scores a KIA, or K slash, all the Germans adjacent to that location have to take a morale check.
Yeah. Yeah. Or people are talking about saying which was that scenario because there's only one like it. Where you can
yes,
where you
yeah,
can't say
no,
which is the scenario with 3 T-34s and they're attacking a small little
yes,
village.
yes.
Yeah.
No, the most popular scenario is called the most popular scenario we have is called Great Vengeance, and
Where was that from?
it's from the first pack. It's
Okay.
Hazmo 6, and if you go to the Roar, I
Yeah.
think it's 27 wins versus 28 wins.
Okay. Is that the most popular because it's been around the longest, or
No.
it's had the most chance to get play time?
It's had the most chance to get played. It's been included in a lot of tournaments.
Okay.
As you can see, like I said,
Well,
it's
27-28 is good. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah,
You can't ask for
27-28 is pretty good.
Yeah.
That starts to become statistically relevant at a certain point. And that's the scenario I was thinking of, is, oh, this one's got the crocodile,
Yeah.
with that special rule. There are only 3 special rules for the whole scenario, but it's you can jump into it right away, and it's a lot of fun that way.
Okay, so just recapping Hazmo 3.
I know, is the tape rolling?
Oh, it's been rolling. Yeah, I never stopped
okay,
it.
all right.
I'm just going to edit out the pause.
Mention that this segment of the Hazmo interview has
Yes.
been brought to you by Cooper's Craft.
Oh no! Oh, move the Coopers more in front of you because I have you in a smaller window. There you
okay.
go.
There we go.
We got some glare. There you go.
There
okay,
you go.
Perfect.
Cooper's Craft.
Okay.
The Ritter Krieg of Kentucky bourbons. So.
So the bottle comes up in a beat up box. All right.
That's pretty funny.
Okay, so recapping. Take your sip. Take your swig. What is that, by the way? Is that bourbon?
That is bourbon.
That's bourbon.
Yeah, I'm day drinking, which is really sad. But in December, it's really funny. I'm not an alcoholic or anything, but in December, if you made a chart of my consumption,
yes,
it goes whoosh,
yes.
like this in December, and then once January 1st hits, like I pour it all down the drain, and I'm
okay.
Is
that your resolution for the year?
That's my resolution for the month, and
for the hour.
I basically become a Baptist, for that month.
There you go. So, so Amy and I, we went to Louisville. Just out of nowhere, she wanted to go to Louisville. So so I knew either she liked baseball bats or she liked bourbon. So we went to Louisville was really cool. I'll tell you something about Louisville. It was empty. It was deserted. There was nobody there. I mean, we weren't there during the Kentucky Derby, but like you're just on the streets, and I'm from Montreal, so I'm used to just everything's packed, wait lists to get into anywhere,
Yeah.
And this was just but still it's a vibrant city, and it does well, and and anyway, but we were there, but we did a tour of a speakeasy, and it's a gimmick for tourists, but you go to the, what do you call a place that makes, it's not a brewery, it's a distillery. Yeah, distillery. Yeah. And then they have a secret door that leads you into a bar in the back, and then they have you sit down and try all these different bourbons, and it was it was wonderful.
Very cool.
It was neat.
Bourbon is the South's gift to civilization.
Yeah. Okay, so we were talking Hazmo 3, just a recap. It is all themed off of Stalingrad. It's not all played in Stalingrad.
Correct.
Right. So tell me about the other ones. Yeah.
He did all the Stalingrad ones. That's 7 scenarios, and they can be. Most of you guys will remember Market Garden, from the '91 annual.
Yeah.
Where it's a series of scenarios that you can play, and each time you play, you get so and so many victory points, and you count them up at the end, and you get the winner of the campaign.
Yes,
So
they did
one
that with
person,
Kursk too in one of
yeah,
the
oh wow,
annuals or journals or something.
oh wow, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was like a 3 scenario thing
Oh, okay,
where you
that
get
one. Yeah, yeah,
points
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
that per
That's
scenario.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. I remember that. But this one, in another cool thing, and Chad always wanted to do this because he was always a big fan of the Market Garden, 7 scenario sequence.
Hmm.
Was he said, okay, we can make that here, so you can either play the mini campaign, which is 7 scenarios all within Stalingrad, or you can play the 10 game, what I call Mega Mini,
Hmm.
which is, the battles inside of Stalingrad, and then 3 battles that represent Operation Little Saturn, Uranus, and Winter Storm,
Hmm.
which was the attempt to relieve
Yeah.
Stalingrad.
Yeah.
And so
Wintergewitter. Yeah.
Wintergevita, that's
Yeah.
exactly
Yeah.
right. And so I was really happy to find that those scenarios were very well received, um, especially the one that represents Operation Uranus, because it's the Russians versus the um, Romanians,
Romanians. Yeah.
and that was chosen as the final scenario for the championship round of Albany last year,
Oh
and
wow.
it was the first choice of both players,
Huh.
and both players had played the scenario once, and so they had a choice of 3 or 5 scenarios. I can't remember what it is, and they both chose that one, and it's called Righteous Red Scythe, and it's Hazmo 28,
Okay. I'm going to take a
and
look at these.
both
I'm going to revisit these. This has sparked my curiosity to go back. There's just so
yeah
many products that you don't
both
give
of them
everything,
oh
fair
totally.
fair chance.
and and both of them did all. I'll send you links to this too. Both of them did pretty long write-ups about it,
Yeah.
and they had a really close game and the whole thing. So that made me really happy.
Yeah.
Uh,
Excellent.
yeah.
Excellent.
So
That's wonderful. Okay, now we're getting to the main event. Let's talk about Hazmo 4. All right.
okay.
So first, tell me about the scenarios, and then we're going to talk about the maps. All right.
Okay.
All
All
right.
right. So we had this idea of including maps in our next product, and the very first person we thought of was Don Petros. And Don Petros did a couple sketches for us, and based on um, a map that I really wanted to see, which was sort of a board five-ish map with a lot of woods, but instead of with one long road, with two parallel-ish roads
Okay.
and some openings, and then on one side you had kind of a farmhouse with some grain and stuff. And maybe when you um, publish this interview, you might be able to put it on screen or something.
Absolutely,
I'm
I'll
not
do that.
sure, but it's a beautiful map.
Yeah.
And for the other one, we approached the estimable Tom Rapetti, who also digitized Petros's map. And but he made this other one all on his own, and we wanted one that represented Normandy, and half of the map was had a lot of bocage, and the other map represented a little village along the lines of that one in Saving Private Ryan, where
Yeah.
there's that sniper in the bell tower and
Is
it's
that
raining.
is that Newville?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think it might be Newville, but
Yeah.
we wanted something along those
Yeah.
lines, and he did a great job. We also wanted a fountain, and so there's this plaza in front of this little chapel, and it's got a fountain, and we basically use vodka rules for the fountain.
Okay.
And so what's great about these maps is not just that they're aesthetically pleasing, but we made 3 scenarios for the Hazmo 1 map. It's called HZ1. And we made 2 scenarios for the HZ2 map because, again, we're consumers. We're ASL consumers. We buy this stuff, and
Yeah.
we know what it's like to buy something whose price has been increased because of the addition of these maps.
Yeah.
And you get these maps, and there are no scenarios for them,
Right.
and that's kind of silly.
Yeah.
And not only that, but we're going to continue incorporating HC1 and HC2 in our future designs. And so that's one thing that's very special. The other thing that's very special is if you look at the front of Hazmo 4, and again, you might flash that on screen when you publish this, it says scenarios for competition. And so basically what we're saying with that is that it's a tournament pack. We wanted to produce a pack where all the scenarios in them could be used for tournament play.
Okay.
And I'm being completely honest when I say that the reaction has been extremely positive.
Did they
I
use
have
them at Albany this year? What was it ready
Yes,
in
they did.
time? Okay,
Yes, they
good,
did.
excellent.
Yeah, they used 2 scenarios from them, and they used the free scenario. Again, people can go to hazardousmovement.com and click on free stuff, and you'll find a free scenario from each pack. And one of the free scenarios, the free scenario from this pack is Hazmo 31, which is called the Cloak of Disorder, and it's Japanese versus Chinese. And this one is more classically Japanese versus Chinese. You can run at the Chinese.
Gotcha.
In this one, it's not inside the city, and the Chinese don't get increased reinforcements or anything like that. But it's a heck of a lot of fun. And
And there's no Slovakians, right?
there are no Slovakians, I
Good.
promise. They
Okay,
didn't
good.
find their way in there
Into Asia. Okay.
into Asia, no. And this was actually it depicts the first land victory by the Chinese over the Japanese. They'd just been getting their ass kicked relentlessly. And they pulled this master stroke on the Japanese once the Japanese had invested this town. Um, and it was the beginning of the Battle of Taiyuan, and the Japanese lost thousands of guys, and so Chiang Kai-shek was like so impressed with this general that he put his portrait up on his wall, and forgave him for his past losses and everything. Like, it was really a masterstroke. And so we try and recreate this in miniature.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Steve Pleva was one of our playtesters,
Yeah.
and he played it with Jim Manfredi, and he said, it came down to the last die roll, and Joe Leos played it with Nick Richardson, the same thing, and Chad and I played. It came down to the last die roll. Matt Romey played it. It came down to the last die roll. You get it? Like, it's really, of all the scenarios I've ever designed, this one is probably the most even,
Okay.
I'd have to say.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of a no-brainer. Like, Steve Pleva, he makes the choices for Albany, and so he included that one. He included one more, which is the Japanese versus the Filipinos, and it's called Destined to Defeat. And that's Hazmo 32. So Hazmo 31 and 32 were included in Albany this year, and this coming year in 2024, the person who's one of the people organizing it is Mike Pucci, also known as the Pooch or Pooch. And today, actually, I sent off a bunch of scenarios to him that he asked for to be included in Albany in December of 24 already.
These are new
So
scenarios?
he asked me which scenarios from the 4 packs I
Oh,
would
I see.
recommend.
Okay. Uh-oh. Yeah.
And so another one I love, and I included it, it's Hazmo 35. It's called In the Vanguard, and it's a bunch of Yugoslavian fascists versus a bunch of Yugoslavian communists. So it's a civil war within a world war, and it's great. It's got the fascist Croats have flamethrowers, DC. They have Panzer 1Bs, which are like, you know, which are like Tiger tanks in 19 in these little side battles.
Yeah.
And the defending communists have a dug-in French FT-17 from World War One.
Yeah.
Along with a bunch of other tricks, some minefields and some wire and stuff like that. And it's super fun. That's another one where Chad and I continued playing even after we'd balanced it
Mm-hmm.
because it was just so fun. So it's
Yeah.
called In the Vanguard. And yeah, that one's a blast. And that one uses HZ1. That one uses our first map. And so, you asked before, if I can circle back, you asked before about trial and error and things
Mm-hmm.
I've done differently and stuff. It was amazingly hard. And I think other people, if they want to start their own third party outfit, if you want to include maps, make sure that you find a printer that can do it. It was extremely difficult for me to find a printer that would do a 22 by 8 map.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was that hard
Yeah.
to find. And in fact, I had to drive an hour away to find a printer. And the printer that I found was really a printer, not like your usual printer, but a printer that does like marketing and posters and stuff. So they have to be able to do unusual sizes. But, that was a lot of driving. But there was a lot of trial and error before then because I'm really afraid we wouldn't be able to produce the maps. Nobody was willing to do 22 by 8. It's a really weird size.
Yeah. So, all your packs, all right, somebody's on death row and it's their last scenario ever. And what do you
Yeah.
suggest? Which one scenario? And I know you're going to say the scenario that's like 91 turns long so that they can prolong the execution, but
That's
no,
right.
what
That's
what
right. So they'll die a natural death before the.
what's your favorite of all four packs?
That's to be totally honest with you.
Assuming you've never played any of them. So take out I'm sick of playing it. I've played it so much from the equation. You're telling somebody, if somebody says, "Hey, you know what? You know what, Chuck? I'm going to give your products a chance. I'm going to play one scenario. You got one shot at this to sell
Yeah.
me." What am I putting on
Um,
the table?
I'm gonna go with because I've never ever heard anybody say anything. I've never heard anybody have anything but rave reviews for kids these days.
Okay. All right.
And because it encapsulates so much of what makes us different.
Yeah. Okay.
And kids these days, you can put that on YouTube right now, and you'll find people doing replays of it. Jim Bishop
Yeah.
did a very lengthy scenario analysis on it.
And that is from
And
pack one again, correct?
that is from pack one, and so it doesn't have the pretty counter art.
Yeah.
But boy, that one will really test your skills because you have to both attack and defend. And the SS start out and they only have 6 squads. They're all HIP, and they have to stop 15. So they're outnumbered almost 3 to 1, and they have to stop 15, British squads from taking this little village. And when I say little, I mean little. And when you take the village, taking the village doesn't mean that you control every building. Taking the village means that you control both of the fortified locations. And so once you've taken both those fortified locations by turn 6, if you're the attacker, if you're the Brit, then you get buku points for that. But it's not over yet because then the boys in black get to counterattack on turn 6, and there are a lot of those guys. So if you've invested that village, you're in much better shape to defend against that counterattack. But it's no guaranteed thing for the SS either. And so it's a real struggle. And I've never heard honestly any negative feedback about that. Everybody who plays it, and it's an 11, I think it's what, an 11 turn scenario. It's an 11 turn scenario, and people really like it. And the British get reinforced 3 times, and the Germans get reinforced 2 times.
I think I might try that one.
Yeah.
Last question about Scenario Pack 4.
Hmm.
The 2 maps, they are available for Vassal download, correct?
Yes, they are.
So you can play this even if you don't have a face-to-face opponent.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Correct. And if anybody is missing those maps on Vassal, they can email me at hazardousmovement@yahoo, and I'll send it to them. And I've also been in touch with Tom Rapetti, who is going to try to get them uploaded onto the site for TPP maps.
Wonderful. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay.
You never asked me whether I play any other games.
Oh, that was it. So, all right. So,
Let me hear it.
last question. Moving away
Sure.
from ASL,
What could that question be?
do you play any other games other than ASL?
No.
Wow, that was a letdown. I thought that was a
No,
loaded
and
question.
and I'll tell you why. I'll tell you
Yes.
why. And this just tells you something about my mentality,
Mhm.
like better or worse, or also maybe my fanaticism about ASL. But I played all kinds of games until ASL. And the reason I don't play any other games is I never have felt like, oh, I've mastered ASL.
Right.
Like, and I don't even mean mastered tactically and strategically. I mean even just the rules.
Yeah.
There are a lot of rules in ASL. I've been playing for, let's see, I started ASL in 1990. So I've been playing for, I'm no mathematician, but that's almost 24 years.
Mm-hmm. No, that's 34 years.
Just testing you.
Yeah.
Like I said, and just testing you.
Yeah.
It's
Linguist,
rather-
not
yeah, a lot,
mathematician.
yeah. I'm a cunning linguist.
Yes.
And don't edit that out.
Right.
But yeah, I've been playing for all that time, and I still don't know, like, beach landings.
Yeah.
I still don't know caves.
Yeah.
I still don't know desert. Although with desert I can't say that I enjoy it that much. So
But you know 7 on the 8 table.
Yeah, exactly. A 7 on the 8 table is a 1 morale check, right?
Sure.
Exactly. So there's some
That's good
things
enough.
like. So there's some things. What amazes me, that's probably the biggest mystery to me in the hobby, is guys who've been playing 30 years.
Yeah.
And
Still
you
use
roll
the
an 8
chart.
on the 16, and they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
let's see what that is."
So-
I don't get that.
So what I've always done right from the get-go was
Yeah.
I just memorized 8 on an 8.
8 on the 8 is a morale
8
check.
on the 8 is a morale check.
That's the
Anything
whole
in either
thing is based
direction
on
is
that.
easy to figure out.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's all based on that.
Yeah.
Like, every once in a while, if it's the 36 table
Oh,
or
yeah.
something, and
You don't know if
somebody
it's a
rolls
2 or a
an 8,
3 check
I
when
don't
you
know
roll
if
the
it's 2
9.
or 3,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
one of the two.
Mhm. Yeah.
But like the basic tables that you use 95% of the time, I don't understand players who've been playing as long as I
Yeah.
have, and they're consulting the IFT. I don't understand that. It's because I feel like there's so much left to know about this game that I don't know.
Mhm.
And it's such a weird thing because I'm not like, oh, I really want to play like, World in Flames or,
That's a good game, by the way. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and I've heard it's a
Yeah,
good game.
yeah.
But I can't say that I have the desire to, because that suggests to me, and again, this is just my mentality,
Yeah.
that suggests to me like, okay, like I've
Yeah.
got that whole ASL thing down. I
Yeah.
don't have it down yet.
Yeah.
And it frustrates me to no end.
Yeah.
And, it frustrates me that, I can spend hours on a scenario, like doing a setup, and Chad can look at it, 5 or 10 minutes and take it apart.
Yeah.
Like, that frustrates the shit out of me.
Yeah.
If I got to a point where that was not the case,
Mm-hmm.
then I would feel like, okay, I've reached the level that I want to reach. I don't have to win. I don't have to win Oktoberfest or something, but
Yeah.
I've reached that level that I want to reach. Now let's look at World in Flames or something like that.
Mhm.
Um,
Well, that was my next
by
question. What's the plans for the future?
Hazmo 5, it's funny. I've got one scenario for it already,
Hmm.
um, which is in Normandy, and it's another bocage scenario.
Hmm.
Chad and I enjoy bocage, and
That's my
that's
favorite, by
another
the way.
one.
That's my
What'd you
favorite.
say?
That's
Oh
my
yeah,
favorite.
bocage
Yeah,
is incredible.
Bocage and the Desert. Those are my two favorites. Yeah.
And it's called High Ambition. That's what it's called. It's called High Ambition, and he played against John Kay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. But he did that thing most players don't do in the bocage, which is, as long as you're behind a bocage hex side and there's some kind of, woods or building or something like that in the hex,
You can drop all advantage after your shot.
you drop all advantage after your shot, and boy, that's rough.
Oh yeah.
Because you're hoping, as the American, okay, I've got him on my defensive fire shot. No, you
Yeah.
don't.
That trick, by the way, that trick is going to be in my next contest on my page. So
Oh
just so you
wow.
know, if you want to beat the contest, that's what you're going to be looking for because a lot of people don't know that rule. That's the one time that shots aren't reciprocal. You know.
Tell me more about this contest.
Oh, I just do a contest. Every post I try to put a contest in, and I used to do a prize, you
Yeah.
know, if you got the contest right. But like for 7 posts in a row, it was the same guy,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, and so it was just like yeah, nobody's really responding to this. All I'm doing
Right,
is
right. Oh
so
man.
yeah.
Well,
All right, anything we want to conclude with? Not to put you on the
anything on?
spot.
No, no, not at all. I did want to say that we have an official retailer in the UK, and that is Second Chance Games,
Yes, they do
and
a
we have
lot. Yeah.
they do a lot. They're
Yeah.
great, and we sponsored the tournament they just put on. I believe it's called Intensifier, I think. And we have an official Canadian retailer,
Who would that
and
be?
that's Tadanac.
Tadanac out in the Maritimes.
Yeah,
Yes, that
and
would be
so
Peter Bartlett, correct?
that is Peter. That
Yeah,
is correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
So I will
and
tell you something. I don't want to make Peter mad,
no,
but
it's okay.
love
Stays between
Peter,
us. Yeah.
love Peter. But
Yeah.
I'm bringing a couple of copies up to Le Valet de Coeur in Montreal when I
Yeah.
go up in the holidays for the holidays.
Yeah.
So you might have another customer in Canada. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh wow.
That's-
How's your French?
Oh no, I'm fluent. Yeah.
Wow. Dude,
Now,
I'm
if
so
it's
fucking
if it's
jealous.
some
Wow.
so my brother's girlfriend is from Marseille, so
Wow.
she laughs at me all the time because I have a very
Yeah.
Quebecois accent. So the
Yeah.
other day, this
You're
is
just a
I'm
Cajun to her.
yeah, it's very different, and I was saying to her I was missing a word, or I was explaining to Amy. Amy was there, she was there, and I was explaining to Amy when you don't know a word, you say comment on dit, which is very literally how
Mm-hmm.
do we say? You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm-hmm.
comment is how, con
Yeah.
dit is we say. That's like a
Can you
literal
spell it too?
translation. What's that?
Can you spell French too?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So
Wow.
so my brother's girlfriend busts out laughing like
Oh
the
wow.
funniest thing she has ever heard in her life. And apparently she's gone back to Marseille and told all her friends about this, about just something as simple as comment because it's very, I don't know, the Quebecois is very the closest I can, and I could be totally off about this, but I always envisioned it to be Cockney to the to the
Okay. Yeah.
aristocratic English, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
very, et Linda, c'est Shirley, you know.
Man.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right.
I really appreciate this
Well, I am great. I
opportunity.
am grateful to have done this little conversation, and
Yeah.
we'll
Oh,
get you back on after Hazmo 5, and
well, I have a question for
yeah,
you.
yeah.
Don't you put on a tournament every year?
Yeah, so every year we put on a tournament, and it's not so it's a tournament. Officially, it's a tournament. It's a team tournament, and it's called Where the Iron Crosses Grow.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay,
Right.
and every team has one advanced player, one intermediate player, one beginner player, and you
Right.
only play inside your bracket. So if
Right.
I'm a beginner player, I'm playing the
Yeah.
beginner players from every other
On the other
team
side.
only. So
Yeah.
most tournaments you go to, as you win, if you're lucky enough to win a game, it just gets harder, 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 and I
Yeah.
respect that. But it also, I can imagine, it gets frustrating for some of the beginner players or the players who never really
Uh,
mastered it. So this, every single game you play, you're playing against
somebody
uh,
of a reason of a
somebody
like
reason like
skill level. Yeah.
your skill level,
Right.
and so
Right.
you
Right.
always have a chance to bring points to your team.
Oh, that's
and
great.
and we've had the honors award, like best player award, many times go to someone
Oh,
from a lower bracket,
oh, that's
where
great.
they've cleaned
That's
up in
that's
their
great.
bracket, you know. And the other
And
thing is,
that helps attract more players to the game. That's brilliant. I like that.
absolutely, and
Yeah.
here's the other beauty of it: you can be a beginner player and you can carry your team. You can carry the
Right.
best player in the house
Yeah.
because you're doing the best in your bracket, so you really feel like you're contributing.
One thing I wanted to say
Yeah.
about Pack 4
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that I forgot to mention
Yeah.
was one attraction to it. It's going to be action from around the world, but there are going to be at least a couple scenarios featuring the Hungarians.
Are you saying
Because
pack 4 or pack 5?
I mean Pack 5. I'm sorry.
Pack 5.
Pack
Okay.
5. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Pack 5.
Yeah.
There are going to be at least a couple scenarios featuring the Hungarians
Yeah.
because they played a much more significant role as an Axis minor than the hobby gives it credit for. I mean,
Gotcha.
if you take
Yeah,
if you take
especially at the
away,
end. Yeah.
yeah, especially at the end, but not only.
Yeah.
They were there. They were there from the beginning. I mean,
Yeah.
beginning with the occupation of Yugoslavia,
Yeah.
and there are rules that are hardly ever invoked in Squad Leader, especially as regards the Romanians versus the Hungarians. They hated each other,
Oh, boy, did
and
they. Yeah.
there are all kinds of rules that apply to them,
Yeah.
but they're almost never invoked.
Yeah.
And in Hazmo 5, they're going to be invoked. Let me just put it that way.
Perfect.
And,
So,
and
two things on that. One,
yeah,
I think this is going to be the year or years of Hungary between what you're doing and
yes,
what Advancing Fire is doing with Hungary with their Budapest module coming out. I think we're going to see a lot more
oh,
Hungary
good.
getting played. That being said, um, Armies of Oblivion just went out of print. So,
Outside of Festung Budapest, you don't see the Hungarians very much.
yeah.
And I've got behind that bed right there. I've got about 8 books that I'm a professor, so I get interlibrary loan, and so I've loaned these books from all over the country um, about Hungary's role in World War II, and I'm finding out all kinds of fascinating
Mm-hmm.
stuff. I mean, they not only had airborne units, but they had airborne drops, like stuff I didn't
Oh,
know.
wow. Wow.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
no idea.
Yeah.
And just absolutely fascinating stuff, and that begs for scenarios.
Yeah.
So, Hazmo 5 is going to be a lot like Hazmo 4 in the sense that we're going to concentrate on
Tournament.
tournament-sized scenarios because that seems to have the largest audience.
Yeah.
However, one thing that's going to be different is you're going to see nations, especially with Hungary and Romania, that you're not accustomed to seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say with Hazmo 4, you have Filipinos.
Yeah.
Look at your ASL set. How often do you break out the Filipino 336s?
Yeah.
Probably not a lot.
No.
And the 2.6 LMGs with a breakdown of 11.
Yeah.
You get to use those actually in Hazmo 4.
At least for one roll.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at least for one roll, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you're like me. One thing that we'd like to do is also include underrepresented nationalities,
Mm-hmm.
and
Except the Slovakians.
Except for the Slovakians.
Yeah, we
And
don't
that's
do
only
that.
because of you.
That's right.
I'm dying to design a Slovakian scenario, but it's only out of loyalty to you that I
There you
resist.
go.
Um,
This is why we can
but
be friends.
that's why we,
Yeah.
exactly, right. So that's why you'll find with us, you'll find the Greeks, you'll find the Moroccans, you'll find the Filipinos,
Yeah.
you'll find like, or this last in Hazmo 4, you'll find the Thai. There was the Franco-Thai War
Yeah.
of 1941, which was of course a war within a wider world war. Um, we really like that, and I think that instead of going into the future and trying to trying to apply ASL rules to Vietnam, which I think is of dubious value,
Yeah.
all that stuff aside, there's plenty of material in World War II itself
Mm-hmm.
that is underrepresented or not represented at all.
Yeah.
You really don't have to look far. I mean, World War II was a world war
Mm-hmm.
in every sense of the word.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been studying this war as an amateur student, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just like you, for decades. I didn't know about the Hungarian airborne troops being
Mm-hmm.
dropped into, Yugoslavia and stuff
Yeah.
like that. It was like, what?
Yeah.
So there's really no need to keep going into the future, into the 50s and 60s and 70s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
One thing I am thinking about, however, is a scenario that represents, because again, it's the same weaponry. I am thinking about a scenario, very seriously about a scenario representing the uprising in Hungary in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating because that was mostly put down.
I didn't know
T-
it was. I didn't know it was an armed uprising. I know
Oh,
very
yeah,
very little about the
big
Cold
time.
War. Yeah.
Not only that, but the Russians lost hundreds of tanks.
Wow. Yeah.
Not one or two, hundreds.
Wow.
And so, and most of those tanks were T-34-85s and T-34s and stuff. So, there's
So the
that's
counter
about,
mix is already there.
yeah, the countermix is already there, and so that's about as far into the future,
Yeah.
from a World War II standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
That's about as far in the future as I'm willing to go.
Yeah.
But we're also not opposed to a Korea scenario,
Mm-hmm.
etc. The most important thing for us is that it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
Fun is number one,
Yeah.
and then number two is balance.
Yeah.
I think all of us can point to scenarios that are totally fun, that we played more than once, the whole thing. Is it necessarily 50-50? No.
Yeah.
But
it's still a
fun
blast.
as hell, and
Yeah.
it's especially gratifying when you win
Yeah.
as the side that's at the disadvantage.
I think what makes a scenario fun for me is like in the end. At first, I'm like, why would I want to play this? But in the end is when I am given in the order of battle, some stuff where I look at it and I go, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yes.
And you go, what's even the purpose of it? I know it's there for a reason. I'll tell you a quick story. I'm playing Danny Stanhagen in a tournament.
Oh yeah, know him well.
All right, and there's a river, and I got to get across this bridge, and he's got some Russians on this side, or British Russians, whatever.
Yeah.
On this side of the river, got to beat them, and then get across the river and find his AT gun and win the game.
Right.
All right, so it's clear. I have all this stuff to go and beat up everybody in front of the bridge, and then cross over the river and win the game. Clear.
Right.
Except, they give me a Schwimmwagen.
Ah.
So I'm like,
what am I going to do with this?
What am I going to do with this? So I'm like,
Right.
I'm going to cross the river in the Schwimmwagen. And Danny Stanhagen, in his ever-present sarcasm, goes, what the hell are you doing? I go,
Oh yeah, that sounds like
yeah. I go, I'm crossing the river. And he goes, what kind of idiot are you? And I go, well, why would they give me the Schwimmwagen? He goes, I'll tell you what. If you make it across the river with that Schwimmwagen, there's a tournament game now, huh?
Yeah.
If you make it across the river in that Schwimmwagen, I'll concede.
Oh yeah.
So right there,
That sounds
we
like
just
him.
changed the victory conditions of the game,
Yeah.
and it was like it made. I'll never forget that game.
Yeah.
It was the most fun, you know. And I made it across the river. I did not
Oh,
accept.
that's
I did
hilarious.
not accept his concession,
Yeah.
and then he ended up beating me because all of my efforts went to getting a Schwimmwagen across the river and protecting it instead of focusing on the bridge. But but
You know,
it was a blast. But stuff like
this
that,
is
or
this has been
they give you
yeah.
something like they give the partisan sewer movement, and you're like, well,
Why?
now I got to use it, you know? 'Cause-
No, and
yeah,
sometimes there's
yeah,
a reason, and
yeah,
it's concealed to you, and it reveals itself in the process of
yeah,
play. And then
absolutely,
there's
yeah,
sometimes, and let's be honest, there's
yeah.
sometimes where they really will give you something, and there really is no reason,
Right, yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree,
and that's very
Yeah,
annoying.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
yeah.
something like
I totally agree with you.
Chad like
Yeah,
identifies
yeah, yeah,
immediately.
yeah, yeah,
Um, all I wanted to say was, thanks so much for this opportunity, and
Oh, absolutely. Thank you
uh,
for doing this. I'm really
yeah,
grateful. Yeah.
I so appreciate this, and I know you have to do a lot of editing because there's a lot of stuff that we talked about, but these 3 hours or whatever went by super fast.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for spending that hour with us. We hope you enjoyed it. I hope to bring a lot more of that in the future through Ritter Krieg, of the personalities and contributors to this great hobby. Everybody have a happy and safe holiday.